This video will cover the remaining sections of the new physical education lesson plan template used in the HB program at GVSU. Specifically, the teaching timeline and differentiation sections will be discussed, including best practice teaching and planning and common mistakes made by future educators new to lesson planning. I'd like to reiterate that lesson planning is not a uniform process, and after completing the teaching timeline and differentiation section, the educator should return to the learning objectives, pre-instructional information, and assessment, and make any modifications as necessary. As the educator checks their planning, they should ensure all sections align appropriately with the lesson activities, no additional materials are needed, and the assessment being used actually measures progress towards the learning objective. Additionally, all sections of the lesson plan are important. Each section helps the educator think through the teaching process intentionally, and effective planning reduces behavior management issues, increases time spent being active and engaged with learning content, and improves the teacher's confidence. This slide shows the beginning of the teaching timeline section of the template. In this section, the educator plans out their entire lesson, including transitions between activities. For some classes at GVSU, students are required to completely script their lesson, meaning everything the teacher says, everything the teacher and students do, and comment student responses and behaviors are described in detail. While in other classes, the professor may only expect enough detail so that a substitute teacher could follow the lesson plan without having any prior experience teaching physical education. The time required for each section should also be noted at the top of each box. Furthermore, please note that the teaching timeline is sequential. The start of the lesson is at the top of the teaching timeline, and the end of the lesson is at the bottom of the teaching timeline. This slideshow also presents the components of the teaching timeline in sequential order. The first component of the timeline is the welcome and overview. In this section, the educator should specify how they will welcome students into their learning environment. The teacher might greet students at the door, meet them at their regular attendance spots, such as squad lines, or rotate around the gymnasium providing feedback while students lead themselves in a self-directed warm-up. The next section is a transition, and transitions are included after every section. Transitions should include how students will be grouped, what equipment needs to be moved, and the management strategies the teacher will use to make the transition as quickly as possible. Effective transitions are critical in physical education because they allow more time for instruction and activities and reduce behavior management issues by increasing students' motivation and engagement. Following the first transition is the warm-up, in which students activate their major muscles, the lower body, by doing whole body movements. The warm-up should also include movements which are specific to the lesson's activities. The teacher may lead the warm-up, or a student leader might lead warm-ups, or students might participate in self-directed warm-ups with guidance from the teacher. Finally, the next section is the introduction to the lesson. This is a good time to share expectations, especially regarding safety concerns, and the lesson's I can statements, and check students' current knowledge. This slide shows the instruction/demonstration, guided practice, and applied activity sections of the teaching timeline. Also notice the engagement strategies and PE teaching styles listed in the column on the right. The engagement strategies are right to the side of the introduction section, or instruction section, and the PE teaching styles are to the side of the instruction demonstration section. The educator writing the lesson plan should highlight the engagement strategies and PE teaching styles which apply to their lesson, using those listed in the column. Note that the PE teaching styles are listed from greatest to least teaching control. Command is the teaching style with the highest teacher control and least student freedom, and learner design style has the lowest degree of teacher control and highest student freedom. More student freedom can be a great opportunity to increase students' engagement and motivation, although students have to be ready to appropriately apply their increased independence and agency. Additionally, in the sections which contain small words describing teaching strategies or curricular models, the teacher should highlight those that apply, such as whole group, individual, center/station, and more listed next to the applied activities section. In the instruction demonstration section, the teacher should consider what teaching methods to use. For example, whole, part, whole, simplification, fractionation, segmentation, or a combination of multiple methods. Additionally, the teacher should list the cue words for the skill being taught, demonstrate the next activity, if appropriate at this time, and use checks for understanding to ensure students are highly engaged. Furthermore, the guided practice section is where students get to work on the primary skill being taught in the lesson. Lessons may or may not use this section, depending on the timing and activities plan. Some examples of guided practice are teacher-directed cues and movements, or individual, partner, or group practice with frequent feedback. The applied activities section is the main portion of the lesson and is usually when students progress towards achieving the learning outcome. A lesson may have multiple applied activities if time allows, and an applied activity should promote continuous physical activity, be highly engaging, and be accessible to learners of all ability levels. In the closer section, the educator should describe how they will review the lesson's content, preview the next lesson's content, and emphasize the lesson's purpose. Lesson closure usually occurs when all of the students are brought together to a single location, with the teacher visible to everyone. The teacher should have their back to a wall so all students can see their face. To review the lesson, the teacher will discuss the lesson's learning objectives, students' progress, and the lesson activities. Students may also share their thoughts when the teacher asks specific questions about the lesson. To review the next lesson, the educator shares what students will do in the next class period, and how that builds on today's lessons. Finally, the teacher will describe the purpose of the content students are learning, which may include the importance of physical activity, application of learning outside the classroom, and the social benefits of physical education. The differentiation section immediately follows the teaching timeline. In the differentiation section, the educator will describe how they can modify their lesson content, teaching strategies, or learning environment to better support all learners. Additionally, consideration is given for students of different linguistic and cultural backgrounds. Specifically, differentiation is individualizing instruction to meet each student's unique needs. In the content section, the teacher describes how they can modify the learning skills and cognitive content students learn. This could involve simplifying the skills to make achievement of learning targets easier, or increasing difficulty to challenge gifted or skilled learners. In the process section, the teacher explains modifications to how students learn the content. For example, the teacher might use a wider variety of resources, such as images, videos, written descriptions, and task cards. Furthermore, different teaching methods can be employed to help students better learn challenging skills. The product describes the target skills students are producing, and the teacher can change this by reducing the number of skill criteria to be met or providing assistance to help students meet the target. Finally, modifying the learning environment might look like changing the size or color of equipment, increasing or decreasing the size of the playing area, changing the distance to a target or teammate, or modifying a game's rules to help more students succeed. The individual section follows these sections. And here the teacher describes how they can meet the needs of students of different cultural and linguistic backgrounds. This might include offering instructional materials in several different languages, and including sports and games in the PE curriculum, which reflect many different cultures. In all, the differentiation section challenges future educators to think about universal design for learning, including planning for students with disabilities and students with no prior experience with physical activity skills. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope this clarified any questions you had about the PE lesson plan template.